I learned that one of the Hebraic meanings of the word Israel is let God prevail.
You know I don't care no more. No more. Travis went good, so I guess we started a video, didn't we? Phil Collins, I Don't Care Anymore, from their 1983 album, Hello, I Must Be Going. And then used on Miami Vice, that came out in the fall season of 1984. As I was a 14-year-old boy, I think I was a teacher then. Isn't that the way it is? 12 is deacon, 14 is teacher, 16 is priest. Let's see. Looking for the scripture. I only have Brigham Young flashbacks coming to my mind. How he's upset with he's the one that wrote the temple ceremony in our endowment session. And prior to 1991, there was the preacher. There's a discussion about how he's educated to be a preacher, and Brigham Young is trying to humiliate him for being educated as a preacher to justify him being true. Hilarious. So what does it take to become an expert in Mormonism? Being Mormon, born and raised? Does that make you an expert? No. You can work at a company all your life, but if you do the same job your whole life, you don't know the whole operations. You don't know how to run a business yourself. All you know is the job you've done for your whole life. That's the equivalent of being a regular Mormon who does the basics, who was born and raised in the church and attends church and occasionally attends the temple, does the routine. Yeah, there's more to being an expert. If you're in a specific career field, you have to become an expert in that field in order to get the job. You have to get the education. You have to get degreed, which means you got to graduate. You then have to get experience. And so you have to do other work your way up the top of the chain jobs until you can finally get the career that you got your education in. And they won't just say, oh, okay, you got educated? Oh, well, we'll put you in this top position making big bucks. That would be the dumbest thing for any corporation to do, is to hire somebody straight out of school. They do not have the practical experience necessary to do the job. I saw this working for the church at their distribution center warehouse, 17th and 17th. It's actually 19th and 17th. But working in the order processing, one day there were some stranger dangers who were younger than I was. And I was in, let's see, it was around 2000-ish. Plus or minus 2000. There were stranger dangers, so it was most likely earlier on in 2017 or 18. It was when they were getting college kids as consultants as to doing the storage, automatic storage units, the crane operations. And they wanted to do a study, and then with that study, they then hired a family member of one of the employees to do the job. Nepotism, it's all over the church. And they were trying to claim that the order processing line itself should be likewise get these storage shelving units with automatic crane operations to pull out one piece of paper, one book, etc. And they claim that that would be a better system, more effective and efficient. My education, which my experience had been put to use when I worked, when I was transferred over to the Beehive warehouse, demonstrates that they should have listened to me on this other one, because I told them it will work perfectly for case lots, but if you try to do it for items within the case lots, it's going to get ugly. Oh man, did it get ugly. The church lost $1 million that first year utilizing that system that they ignored my warning on. Plus, more problems ensued because humans put the information in the system and on the automated system to be placed in their locations. And so there were numerous products that get lost. And once they're lost, you've got to stop all operations. You've got to have human beings actually go in and do a full inventory on every location to correct the one error. I warned them, they did not listen. They paid the price of $1 million in losses that first year. And of course the company said, oh, it's your employees. They just suck. Blame the victims. And so, what does it take to be an expert in Mormonism? Well, one, you've got to be educated. And I'm sorry, seminary and institute, whether it's separate from the WISE or the other college campuses of Mormondom, that doesn't make you an expert in Mormonism. And how do I explain this to you? All my credits from Rick's College for Mormon Bible studies, because I took Old Testament and New Testament courses as well. I came home from a mission and decided to take everything that the church offered there at Rick's. So every single religion course, I took it. Even the genealogy one, which that was the old school genealogy, and I didn't like that process. But when you're at Rick's College, it's not necessarily about the class, but it's about who you get partnered up with. That makes it all the more enjoyable for labs. Nonetheless, I took courses in anthropology of the ancient Middle East, thus the Bible, Old Testament courses. The guidance counselor in my final year named it, and so she named it Bible Studies. She had no clue. It was just a way to get me degreed and out of their university. I guess they didn't want my money anymore. But Thomas Robinson was the teacher for all of the various courses of that. Plus other classes that I took that helped supplement to help me in those courses. But we were discussing the documentary hypothesis, the peaceful infiltration theory, and other such theories related to various parts of the Bible. He was the one who instructed me that scholars recognize that the book of Esther is influenced by Babylon because Esther is Ishtar, a Babylonian deity, and Mordecai is Marduk, and so they recognize that it's not likely a true story, but apparently they don't know how to be scientists to run scientific tests for confirmation. Thus, my education supplemented with that education. And if you're already lost, I would certainly hope you don't go around claiming you're an expert in Mormonism, or at least claiming that you know who's not an expert, when they actually are. Or dismiss an expert in Mormonism because you don't agree with him. There are several categories about a religion that need to all be learned in order to qualify as an expert. You've got theology, scripture, ritual, doctrine, administration, and each of these areas involve different subcategories that are required. So for scriptures, it's not just about memorizing scriptures in English. It's not even about knowing a better translation than our King James Version of the Bible, because our footnotes occasionally will have a Greek or Hebrew, which, have you even bothered to check if they're even correct? Then there's this issue of ORs and IEs, which Nelson got humiliated at the pulpit of conference when he pulled that stunt. And so, yes, being in the office is a fallacious argument to claim that you're automatically an expert in Mormonism. You are supposed to already be an expert in Mormonism before becoming a leader in the church. That's why Christianity requires education in Christianity before you go out and preach. That kind of gives you more of an authoritative standing within Christianity. But in Mormonism, you don't need to be an expert. You're going to be a farmer. You don't need to read the Book of Mormon. I had a bishop, technically a branch president of the older singles ward. They're at Union Station Boulevard and 72nd, behind the church, behind the fire department there. That's where we held our meetings. And we were cleaning the chapel one Saturday, because the church wanted to cut back on even more money so they can funnel into offshore accounts to flee in a future time, like pretty soon here. And he and I went to work on the foyer, and we're pulling out the couch so that the person on the vacuum could vacuum behind it. And he was talking about how he's not one of those intellectuals like I am. Already, he's turning me into the other, so that he can justify his position on this matter. Because the church came out after September 6th and condemned education in Mormonism and gave it the bullying nickname intellectualism, so that learning was now a bad thing in the church. And then they, of course, had to butcher the scripture about he who is learned, or let's look it up. Second Nephi chapter 9. Our MTC president told us one meeting that he challenged us. Challenge was the big thing back then. To read Second Nephi chapter 9 each and every single day we were in the mission field, or in the MTC. So of course I didn't memorize it. I don't memorize. I do associative learning. It was much easier. I still got A's on all my tests, and then I could dismiss all the information after the test was over and I got my A. Oh, the cunning plan of the evil one. Oh, the vainness and the frailties and the foolishness of men. When they are learned, they think they are wise, and they hearken not unto the counsel of God, for they set it aside, supposing they know of themselves. Wherefore their wisdom is foolishness, and it profiteth them not, and they shall perish. This is exactly what the bishop, branch president, was doing. He thought he was wise because he's not being learned, and he's supposed to know of himself and set aside the Spirit. To be learned is good if they hearken unto the counsels of God. And that's not the prophets. Alma chapter 32, starting verse 28. Gives us the whole process. Not complicated, very easy, simplistic doctrine. Just requires experts to teach it. And, dear God. And so, yes, if the church really were the true church, because Joseph Smith was already starting to set all this up for the church. He had Egyptian papyri. He was working on manuals for Mormons to learn Egyptian. And now the church wants nothing to do with the book of Abraham, just wants to get rid of those facsimiles and just stick to the Abraham chapter 1 text out of the context of his translation of the first two facsimiles. He never got to facsimile number 3, the marriage of Isaac. That's Rebecca in the role of Ma'at. And the church won't tell you this. Not even the apologists who claim to know Egyptian, to be experts in Egyptian. Even in professional fields, I have learned that people who claim to be experts are actually not. And so, for scriptures, you need a corrected translation of the whole Bible. You need to understand the other scriptures that were rejected by the Christian church in our Bible. You need to know all of that. You need to know the original languages. Yeah, all of a sudden Mormonism got complicated. And thus you need to know Egyptian. And Egyptologists will not translate figure or facsimile number 1. Did you know it's supposed to be translated? Joseph Smith renders a partial translation of it in Abraham chapter 1. He didn't fully translate it. It needs to be translated still. Egyptologists skip right on by and say that their explanation is different than Joseph's explanation. See, they're not experts, but they all want to claim to be in order to maintain their lifestyle from the wages they get as a so-called expert. Money tends to corrupt. That's why the Book of Mormon says you cannot have a monetary system of economy. You have to do away with a monetary system of economy. It corrupts society. It's not the money that corrupts the society, it's the system of economy that corrupts the society. It's the precepts behind the manner of the economy. Thus, there's like different kinds of economic systems: socialism, communism, capitalism, barter, etc. They all have different precepts upon which they're based, and they're all wrong. They all are corruptible. Because you cannot factor in the human and get away with it. That's what I had to do with my changing of the warehouse at Beehive Clothing, was to factor in the human. And even after it was done and shown to be jaw-droppingly, exponentially better than even I had imagined, all of a sudden the rest of the employees were now scared for their jobs. It's the church. You're not going to lose your job unless you're a translator. and yeah, it was exactly what the church was wanting, but didn't bother to tell anybody. And so all of a sudden, there it is. Oh, great. And so what they wanted to do was just transfer the excess employees over to the distribution center warehouse, where that was going to be the central focus now. So that the garments aren't shipped from the Beehive Clothing, they go to the distribution center warehouse to be shipped out. And so it was just a hub to transport the finished product in box form. And so, yeah, there was nothing for them to worry about. But to give you an idea, we had a crew of 7 that worked 40 hours a day, 5 days a week, and had to work overtime on Saturdays in order to get closer to being caught up for Monday, for which we then had to repeat again and again and again. And I was told, oh, this is the best system that we can come up with. Many people have tried to come up with different ways to fix the the problem. It just can't be done. Nobody can do it. This is the best. I did it. He eventually found himself a better job in a different warehouse. So good for him. He had a young family to take care of. So, but him being gone and the new manager being gone, the new manager, old manager gone. New manager came in and said, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." All we needed was a crew of 2, and we were done by 10 in the morning. That's it. 10 in the morning, done. The order processing line at Beehive Clothing never called back for orders anymore. Hey, we're low on this. We're low on this. Can you give us some more? Nope. No more. Done by 10. 4 hours. We started at 6. Yeah. To be an expert, it is very noticeable of a difference between those who are in the position and those who are actual experts. I can even tell you again about Isaiah. Bruce R. McConkie, I think everybody knows, was smarter than the average Mormon. Go to Isaiah now. This is your homework assignment. Go through all of the footnotes from the beginning and just keep on going. You'll eventually recognize a difference in the quality of the footnoting. And I'll give you a hint. You'll know exactly which ones Bruce R. McConkie did and which ones a regular Mormon who was also involved did. And be careful, there are IEs and ORs. Avraham Gilead, was the one in charge of putting in Hebrew footnotes. So when you see Hebrew, you see that the church accepted his. When you see IE or OR in the Old Testament for the Hebrews, yeah, they didn't like his Hebrew and changed it and put an IE or OR to cover it up. So when I was involved with it, they said, yeah, we want to get rid of all the IEs and ORs and put the actual Hebrew in if possible. But they did not do it for the English versions, and then, oh, Nelson, so brutal. Oh, those Hebrew scholars that you referred to in conference, oh, they humiliated you. And then the Church News did a video clip of it, and they took out the part where he referred to Hebrew scholars, and then they go right to the scripture footnotes. And you see IE. Oh, so painful. So painful. It's amazing. He's still, in this last conference, let God prevail in your lives. Oh my God. That is some ego to be humiliated by an expert and then continue to claim that you're right. And continue to spread the wrong information. Oh, how humiliating for him. Theology. It's one thing to know Mormon theology. It's another thing to know the whole concept of theology utilized in all religions. See, the Christians educate their preachers, but only for Christianity. They don't teach them how to be experts above and beyond their biased religious views. And that's where the problem comes with Mormonism. Many Mormons know about the theology of Mormonism, the premortal council in heaven, and it's limited. And as a result, there are Mormons who then add to it and change it for their bias. So Saturday's Warrior, for example, yeah, they sort of manipulated the Mormon theology to create their little play that was at BYU and then turned into a video. Ritual. It's one thing to have everything memorized. You know, Adam, 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 where art thou? I heard thy voice and hid myself because I was naked. Who told thee that thou wast naked? Hast thou been partaken of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, of which I commanded thee not to partake? The woman thou gavest me and commanded that she should remain with me, she gave me of the fruit of the tree, and I did eat. Eve, what is this thou hast done? The serpent beguiled me, and I did eat. Lucifer, what hast thou been doing here? I have been doing that which has been done on other worlds. What is that? I have been giving some of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil to them. Lucifer, because thou hast done this, thou shalt be cursed above all the beasts of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust thou shalt eat all the days of thy life. If thou cursest me for doing the same thing which has been done on other worlds, I shall take the bodies that thou createst for adamant, or spirits that follow me, and that screwed it up. Associative learning, not memorization. So once I screw something up, I have to go back to the memory to retrieve the information. It's another thing to learn of all rituals in their context and the origin of all religions, the Egyptians. And with Mormonism, it's more complicated because Joseph Smith's temple rituals were different than when Brigham Young started his own branch off. And that comes to another part about Mormonism and all religions, is administration. There are certain processes of administration for succession. They have to be followed. And in other churches, they have explanations for this. Our church, they sort of withhold information. They don't want to tell us. And yet, when we come across the scriptures that tell us what should have been done, the church says, you can ask questions, you just can't question. You can't criticize us. Stay away from 19 July 1840B. Don't read that. We're not putting it in our Doctrine and Covenants as a section, even though it refers to other sections, like section 101, verse 51, the parable. Yeah. And then doctrine. I did not grow up in Mormon, Utah. I had to learn Mormonism from Mormon scriptures. The doctrine was taught to me by the Book of Mormon, by the Doctrine and Covenants. And so when I moved to Utah and I hear the common doctrines of Mormons, I'm horrified. I even wonder what they're teaching you in high school or in grade school, because you don't understand English. I mean, dear God, just take Moroni chapter 10 verses 4 and 5. Not a single Mormon here in Utah understands that passage correctly. Shall I refer to you again to Joseph Smith's history in 1838, which has been canonized, and he's talking about how every single different Christian church understood the exact same biblical passage in a completely different way. That's Mormons for you. There are rules for English. There are definitions for words. What Mormons have done is violated the rules and changed the definitions, so that Mormons not only cannot comprehend what they read in the Book of Mormon, they can't even be comprehended as to what they're saying. They make no sense. To actually implement what Mormons are claiming can't be done. And then they say, well, it's my spiritual witness, can't judge me. What? So being an expert is a lot of work. And it does take a lot of years. But it sure would help if we had experts leading the church, because they could provide the manuals and the tools necessary to learn at a much quicker pace. When you have people who are not experts, they tend to keep the future generations of students in the dark as well. And thus, somebody who then actually does all the work necessary to become an expert, then they become hated. Burn the witch! I'm not a witch, I'm your wife. Yeah, Plato's allegory of the cave. Perfect illustration. Mormons, by not being properly educated in Mormonism, are chained to the wall. And what they see on the wall is all they know. And they claim that's the full truth and nothing but the truth, and that's their story and they're sticking to it. They have no interest in freeing themselves from the chains that hold them down so that they can see the bigger picture. Plato was kind of cool, huh? He should be included in our scriptures.